what's happening, everyone? It is I, the man, the myth, the mustache, Tim here, and have I got a brand new video for you. Welcome to part 11 of What If Toga Was in 1A. I just wanted to stop by and say hello, grab a drink, grab a snack, whatever, just sit back and enjoy yourselves because you are in for a show. Let's begin, shall we? Shinzo and Toga met up on the way to UA early next morning. Both figured they were to meet Aizawa in his classroom, given how their teacher hadn't informed them on where they should meet up next after he had left them in the forest. The internships were set to last a week, so they both had figured their teacher still had some plans for them for the remaining 5 days. The students hoped that Aizawa had just forgotten to contact them the night before due to the Hosu incident, so they figured he may be at the classroom waiting for them by now. Sadly, the room was empty. The only thing that met them in the classroom was a small note left on the desk. Shinzo went up to check the note. His face grew an annoyed look as he stared at it. The boy scooped up the note, then read it over once more in hopes its contents would change upon a closer inspection. "You've gotta be kidding me," he said with a tone of disappointment that competed with his previous annoyance. "What's it say?" Toga asked with a groggy tone. The girl had stayed up far too late by accident. She had watched the news about the Hosu incident and the hero killer far later than she had intended to. It had left her with very little sleep to work with. She rubbed her tired eyes, then looked over the note that Shinzo held out to her. Her vision took a moment to adjust to the letters from how groggy she was. Once they did, she began to read the note out loud. "I've gained permission to have you both train in the gym for the rest of the week from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. You two both know your set goals from yesterday. Don't waste this time and get to work. I have more pressing matters I need to tend to, so don't wait on me to start. Aizawa." Toga squinted her eyes at the signature with a scrunch on her face. "That jerk totally ditched us!" "I mean, he had at least warned us that we had 2 days to learn, I suppose. I didn't really expect this was what he meant." Shinzo sighed and threw the note away. "At least we have the gym to practice in." Toga let out a loud groan while she followed Shinzo out. He wasn't wrong. Aizawa, in his own odd way, had warned them. He even told her that most of her internship with him would be the same as normal classes. She had figured he'd be there to supervise and at least guide them, so this was a major disappointment when he wouldn't even be around. She supposed she was glad they had managed to learn something before Aizawa bailed on them. The two went to the gym after they got into their hero gear. Once there, they parted ways to different sides of the room to do their own individual training. Shinzo practiced primarily with the raps. He started with the basics to understand a bit better on how they actually worked. Meanwhile, Toga worked on her speed as she tried to think about different ways she could possibly work on her main quirk. After some solo training, the two decided to spar against each other. Both had made some progress on their own, but not very much. In the first bout of their sparring, Shinzo attempted to hit Toga while she teased him occasionally. Soon enough, Shinzo figured out how he could use the raps to trip Toga. Toga, pretty impressed by his move, complimented him on this. Shinzo just made a comment on how he needed to work on his combative skills in general. Toga agreed with this. His skills were significantly lower than what they needed to be if he wanted to actually fight anyone up close. She decided to insist on teaching him some of what she knew, or at least some of the basics she had learned from Vlad King. Shinzo wasn't too certain if he wanted her to teach him due to how she usually acted. He wasn't too positive about how good of a teacher she would be. After some thought, he decided to allow her to teach him the basics. As expected, Toga did end up teasing him occasionally. But despite this, she taught him well. She even corrected his stance as needed while she explained what was wrong with it, so he knew how to avoid the issue in the future. Shinzo was honestly a bit surprised at how well she taught, but was also very grateful for the help. The two continued to practice until it hit lunchtime. Shinzo decided he wanted to keep practicing for a little while longer. Toga left him to it and decided to see if Vlad King was in. As expected, he was out, likely due to having his own interns to help. A small wave of relief washed over her. She did want to talk with him again in general. She knew she still had to build up the guts to ask him about obtaining blood so she could train her main quirk. She figured she could ask Shinzo if she could borrow some from him, but if she kept asking him to do that daily for the rest of the week, it may pose an issue. Not to mention, it would be incredibly awkward just to ask him about it since she barely knew him. Toga decided for now to just text Uraraka about the situation. She was a bit surprised when Uraraka replied right away. Apparently, she was also on break for lunch. Much to Toga's relief, Uraraka was usually pretty understanding. She even agreed to meet Toga in the gym before 6 p.m. so she could draw some of her blood to work with. Toga was grateful to have a friend like Uraraka. After lunch, Toga returned to spar with Shinzo and ran back over the moves she had taught him. He was a fast learner when it came to understanding the moves. The only issue was his body's physical limitations. That was something that would surely just take time to correct, but something he could easily do on his own. At the last hour, Toga left Shinzo to practice on his own when she spotted Uraraka enter the gym. The two happily made their way to a spot to chat. Toga was very excited to hear what Uraraka had been up to, and Uraraka seemed just as excited to hear about Toga's training. Toga was very pumped to hear Uraraka enter combative training, while Uraraka was a bit bummed for Toga upon the news about Aizawa. Both agreed that it was likely something important if he just left the two to train on their own. One thing that did perk them both up was something Uraraka had seen photos of on the news. It was a photo of Bakugo with his hair back, as well as his outfit being far less chaotic than normal, which gave Toga a good laugh. The pro he was with, Best Genist, just became one of her top 10 favorite pros thanks to this. With their jokes done, the time came for Uraraka's blood to be drawn. Toga blushed wildly despite her friend's reassurance it was okay. Toga was still a bit unnerved, but stuck her needles into the girl's arm to draw her blood. She couldn't help but stare at the blood as it pooled into the reserves on her suit. Feelings arose while she watched the blood. They were very similar to the one she had with Bakugo and Midoriya. They were similar in a way of the desire to see more blood, but thankfully not as violent. She felt her cheeks grow warmer as Uraraka took her free hand in her own to gently hold it, while the other drew blood. Her friend likely assumed she felt embarrassed still. "It's okay, really. If you need, we can stop for a second," Uraraka offered with a reassuring tone. "I know you've been nervous about your main quirk, but it'll just be fine, Himiko. Promise." Toga reassured her that she'd be fine and continued to draw her blood. While she drew the blood, she couldn't help but wonder if she felt the feeling she did due to the people or the blood. It was odd to her how easily she felt feelings for others lately. The feeling always came up upon the sight of their blood, which she found a bit odd. She also wondered if it was a bad thing that she so easily felt the things that she did. The feelings made her heart almost feel as if it was fluttering. It was hard to imagine feelings that made your heart flutter as bad things. She supposed they weren't all bad if she avoided hurting anyone for them. Uraraka spoke up, disrupting Toga's thoughts. Himiko, do you think that's enough yet? I'm feeling a bit woozy," Uraraka asked with a gentle smile. "Oh shoot," Toga said as she removed the needles from Uraraka's arm, which caused small beads of blood to form where the needles had been. "I'm so sorry, I got lost in thought." Whatever her feelings truly were, Toga knew that she should try to avoid thinking too much about them when she was working directly with blood. Uraraka reassured Toga that it was alright when Toga apologized a few more times for good measure. Toga helped Uraraka up and they went to Aizawa's classroom. Given Uraraka was a bit weak in the knees after her internship training, followed by the blood donation, Toga insisted on helping her home. Uraraka agreed, but mostly so they could hang out a bit longer. As Toga changed, she couldn't help but stare at one of the many vials that was stored in her suit. She knew she needed to return the suit. She also knew it would likely be frowned upon for her to take a vial of blood home with her. "I can't take the vial back home. But maybe if I took the blood out?" She whispered the thought out loud. She bit her bottom lip while she debated. An internal voice whispered thoughts of encouragement to her. The voice was of the desire she had been trying to repress. She knew it was wrong to listen to it, but the draw of the blood was enough for her to do as it asked. She snuck off from the changing room to make her way to a vending machine. She bought herself a bottle of water, then a candy bar. She figured her friend would need the sugar after all the blood she drew. Toga then made her way back to the changing room after emptying the bottle. Once she returned, she filled the bottle with some of the blood. She looked down to the bottle, pleased with herself. Though after a moment, she realized how odd it would be if she was caught walking around with a bottle filled with blood. Her eyes shifted to the jacket she wore with her school uniform. Her face lit up as she came up with an idea. She took her jacket off and wrapped the bottle in it. She then held it as if it was just a bunched-up jacket, then rushed to return the costume. Once she was back in the room, Toga saw Uraraka asleep at one of the desks. She couldn't help but smile at her. Uraraka did have a bit of a cute sleeping face. Toga regained her focus once more, then rushed to put her jacket in her backpack with the rest of her belongings. She woke up Uraraka and offered her the candy bar, along with teasing of offering to carry her home. Uraraka laughed at the offer with a no, but took the candy bar. Toga helped Uraraka home before she went home herself. That night, she asked her mother while they ate if it was a bad thing to like several people at once. Her mother laughed and told her it was normal, though her mother followed up with a threat at grounding her if she caught Toga cheating on anyone she may date in the future. Toga reassured her mother that she would never do such a thing. After dinner, Toga took the bottle out while she was alone in her room. She eyed the blood with a bright blush. The inner desire to drink it filled her entire being. To stop herself from drinking any of it, Toga told herself she would just end up spilling it everywhere. It was a silly reason, but the only one she could come up with at the moment to fight the feeling back. Even her shame about having the blood to begin with seemed absent at the moment. She hid the bottle in her closet, then forced herself to leave her room. She had heard her mother watching TV in the other room, so she decided to join her as a distraction. Toga sat with her until her mother decided to go to bed with her father after she grabbed a glass of water. "Hun, you know you're just going to spill that all over the bed at night again," her father grumbled out. "Don't worry." Her mother waved Toga's father off playfully. "I'll use a straw this time." Toga paused and looked over at her mother as she grabbed a straw for her glass of water. Toga's eyes trained on the straw as it submerged itself into the water. Her mother reminded her not to stay up too late as she left. "Don't worry, Mom. I was about to go to bed anyway," Toga replied, still distracted by the straw. Within that single moment, her reasoning was destroyed. Once Toga heard the door click, she felt a haze wash over her very being. She got up and walked to the kitchen. Her eyes never moved away from the straw holder, as if it would flee from her sight the moment she glanced away. Her hand rose and moved slowly towards the straws. Her fingertips slowly pressed into the bundle and shifted to grab a single straw. Suddenly, the fridge door closed behind her, which caused the young girl to let out a startled eep. Her father jumped at her sudden reaction and held his chest. "You can't scare me like that, Himiko," he said firmly. His other hand held a can of Coke that he had likely forgotten to grab before he left for bed. Toga blushed hard, then bowed her head in apology. Before he could say anything else, she rushed off like a child caught with her hand in the cookie jar. She fled to her room quickly and closed the door behind her just as fast. She could hear her father as he muttered to himself. The sound of the TV switched off, followed by the closing of her parents' bedroom door. Toga sighed with a droop of her head as she finally relaxed. After a moment, she smacked her cheeks for acting as stupidly as she'd had. Once she finished gathering herself from what she thought was a crazy close call, she crawled into bed and went to sleep. The rest of the week, Toga did her best to keep her calm when it came to the blood she hid in her closet. When she was at the gym, she taught Shinzo more moves that she knew how to do thanks to Vlad King. Every so often, the two would spar to allow him to practice the moves. During this, she would also practice fighting while she was using her quirk. Each time, she used some of Uraraka's blood to turn into her. Her friend's body type was a bit different from her own, but thankfully not by much. It provided a challenge to her due to the differences that were present in their body types, though not too great of one. Toga even found it was quite a bit of fun to walk around as her friend. Whenever she struggled to keep her mind off the blood she kept hidden in her room, Toga would look up fan forums about Stain. The man had intrigued her more after she heard what his quirk was off the news. The information she found on him on the forums, alongside how many others viewed him, also piqued her interest. Likely this wasn't a good thing that a known killer had intrigued her so much, but she was just grateful it kept her mind off the blood in her closet. After the week was over, she felt much better about her quirk. She even ran into Vlad King on her way out of the school one day. She filled him in on everything that had been going on for the past week, with much excitement, only leaving the parts out about her recent situation with blood, and things relating to the feelings it gave her. He congratulated her on her progress of how she saw her quirk, and gave her a hug before they parted ways. Once Toga arrived at class, she sat down and pulled her phone out to go through the fan forums about Stain. While she skimmed the latest conversations about the actions some of the fans were taking to make a change like Stain had, she overheard Kaminari commenting on how he found Stain kinda cool. She smiled a bit to herself that it seemed someone else in her class could look past the deaths the man had caused to look more towards what he stood for that was far more important. Sadly, Kaminari was forced to apologize due to a lecture from both Midoriya and Iida. Toga understood where they came from, but was still a bit upset to see them shut down a classmate's opinions so openly. Instead of speaking up, she chose to go back to reading the forum posts. She didn't agree with how some of them chose to try their hand at changing the world, but some were doing good jobs, like standing up for themselves to others who put them down for their looks or villainous quirks, while others who had been pros were acting a bit more heroic. The pros in question were more lower rank ones, as well as low in numbers. Despite this, it was still a great change to see. Iida started to instruct everyone to stop talking and take their seats due to how soon class was about to start. Since she was already in her seat, she chose to keep scrolling on her phone until their teacher would arrive. She looked up at the sound of Iida's marching coming up from behind her. "Toga, you should put your phone away before class." Iida's words halted when he spotted the site she was on. Toga turned off her phone's screen and tucked it away as their eyes met. He did bad things, but what he stands for is far more important than just to ignore it, Toga whispered. Iida looked as though he wasn't certain on how to respond. He didn't have much time to think about it before Aizawa arrived to guide the students out of the room to take a practice race test to see how far they came due to their internships. Iida pushed his questions aside and marched to the front of the class to guide them to the changing rooms. As the races went on, Aizawa seemed a bit quiet towards Toga when she didn't show much improvement. She had focused more on helping Shinzo as well as growing more comfortable with her own quirk, so she wasn't that surprised she hadn't gotten much better. She felt a little bad about possibly letting down Aizawa's expectations. On the other hand, she was more than happy to know she had gotten done with her time, even if most of it wasn't for her own betterment. Toga went back to the changing rooms with the other girls. After Mineta tried to spy on the girls and made Jiro feel inadequate, Toga and the others did their best to cheer her up and reassure her of her looks. In the end, the offer of a girls' night out was just the thing to perk the student up. Before Toga could leave with the others, Iida stopped her. His face and tone of voice were quite serious. "Toga, would it be alright if we talked a bit more about what you said earlier?" Toga's smile faded. She waved to the others to let them go on without her. She told them she'd meet up with them soon. She then left with Iida to a more private place to talk. Iida surprised Toga when he was willing to listen to her viewpoint. Due to the confidence she had in her quirk, she found herself able to even explain that her quirk had always been seen as a villainous one. She explained how she had felt she had to hide it for a good bit of her life due to this, but recently had been able to come to accept it. She went on to say how many of those on the forum were in similar situations, but with less than happy endings when it came to their own situations. She explained she didn't agree with what Stain did, but agreed that his ideals had helped bring to the attention of others about the pros, along with how others treated others with body-changing quirks and villainous quirks. Iida was still not very pleased about the fact she was on Stain fan forums, nor was he pleased how she spoke of Stain in such a positive light. Despite this, he told her that he can understand her intentions at their core. He didn't agree with how she chose to express those intentions, but understood her reasoning to a degree. He also apologized for looking at her phone, but did ask her to try to not have it out so close to the start of class. Toga agreed, while also apologizing for the phone situation. She also apologized to him for what happened with his brother, and how this may have hurt Iida from it being brought up. She may not see eye to eye with Iida, but she still felt bad about what he had to go through recently. The two accepted the other's apology, then went their own ways. Toga was glad they could work out the situation. As the one weight with Iida was lifted off of her shoulders, Toga couldn't help but notice that several others still lingered. She felt this pit in her stomach that told her things were only going to get more complicated from here on out. And that's our video for the day, so thank you all for indulging yourselves in our story thus far. I hope you have enjoyed it. Now there are a few more things I need to go over before the video ends. First, we have a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts and lore of a wide variety of anime, which is sure to expand your weeb knowledge of all kinds, guaranteed. On top of that, we have a third channel called We the Celestials Naruto What Ifs. It's what we do on this channel, but in the vast world and lore of Naruto. So go check that out if you're in the mood for some jutsu action! Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I want to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. Finally, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I want to extend an invitation to join our team. We only have one caveat: you must be 16 years or older to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord in the description below. Now, our Discord is an all-around fantastic place to be, whether you're a fan or looking to join our band of misfits. So that's it for today's video, so thank you all for watching, and as always, I do hope you have a great day. And before I go, I do hope everyone is taking care of themselves mentally and physically, that you are staying hydrated. I want you all to know that it's okay to fail and to make mistakes. Don't hold yourself to impossible standards of perfection. That path belies madness. Accepting our failures and mistakes makes us human, makes us humble, and makes us understand that we can do better in the future. So, take it easy on yourself, don't beat yourself up, things will get better. This has been Tim. Mustache out.